First thing you want to look for on your 1968 quarters is if you turn your quarters over to the back of the coin, the reverse, and you get a USB coin microscope from couchcollectibles.com, you'll be able to see your coins up close like this. Look for a double die reverse, doubling taking place on the back of the quarter. So here's a couple examples of that. If we look here at quarter, you can really see it there on the Q and the U, and really on all the lettering there. That is a double die reverse. So here's an example of a 1968 Denver minted Washington quarter that has that double die reverse. Now this coin has not got a mint state grade, but it is graded at about uncirculated 58. And this Washington quarter sold for over $1,000. Now if we look at this coin here, this is a 1968D, again with the double die reverse. And it's graded at a mint state 65, so a much higher grade, and that will give it a little bit more value. This quarter here sold for over $1,800. Now if you look at a 1968 quarter that's got an extremely high grade, now this coin is graded at a mint state 68. Like I always say, the coin grading scale only goes up to 70. This has got some really nice natural toning to the coin as well. And this quarter, because of that high grade, sold for over $8,000. Now keep in mind, if you have a 1968 quarter, it's all scratched up, it's been circulated, it doesn't have any types of errors, it's only going to be worth its real face value of 25 cents. Now high grades and errors are what is going to give the coins value. Next up is another high graded Washington quarter. Now this is the no mint mark from 1968, and because of the high grade, this quarter sold for over $9,000. Moving on to a very simple type of error to look for in your pocket change. Now this coin is missing the reverse clad layer. So we can see here on the front, the clad layer is there, looks very normal like a regular quarter you would find in change. But here on the back, you can see the inner copper layer core, which is missing the outer clad layer on the coin. Now this quarter here sold for over $85. It's graded at about uncirculated 50, so definitely not the highest grade, but definitely not the lowest grade. Now for your 1968S proof coins, there's a couple things you want to look for. The first one is an RPM. So on the S mint mark, zoom in, put it underneath your microscope, look at the S mint mark. This is an example of a repunched mint mark that is taking place on the 1968S Washington proof quarter. Now here's an example of that coin that has that RPM, that repunched mint mark. This coin is graded at a proof 68, so it is in excellent condition. Now this quarter here sold for over $1,300, a $1,300 quarter. Also on your 1968 proof quarters, you again want to look for a double die reverse. So doubling taking place on the lettering on the reverse of the Washington quarter. Always be on the lookout for that. Here's an example of the 1968S double die reverse, the proof quarter. And this Washington quarter here sold for over $400. $400 quarter. Can't forget about the 1968S proof quarter that is graded at a proof 69. Nearly a perfectly graded coin. Now 70 would have been a perfect graded coin, so 69, very, very close. Now that will give the coin a lot of value, and this coin sold for over $2,500. Check out these other quarters from the 1960s that you should always be on the lookout for that are worth money. Here, this one isn't the most valuable one of the video, but it's a pretty easy error to look for. Now this is a broad struck coin. You see that taking place all around the rim of the coin there, both on the obverse, the front, and on the reverse, the back of the quarter. And this quarter here sold for over $45, so not a lot of money, but it's worth a lot more than a quarter. So if you find something like this, definitely one to keep and put into your coin collection. Next up is another 1965 quarter, of course, because that's what this whole video is about. This is where the obverse has been struck through a fragment. So when the coin was being produced, something got in the way, and this is the result of it here on the front of the quarter. You see there on the reverse is fine. The errors taking place on the obverse. Now, this quarter here sold for over $140. Next up is a 1965 Washington quarter that has been double struck, and it's got flip over and collar, so we could see that it's been double struck there. If you look to the right side of the quarter there, you could really see how the design is rotated as well. And if we go here to the reverse of the quarter, you see that taking place too. You can see the date on the back of the quarter there, 1965. You can actually see that there at the top of the quarter. So right there where it says United States, but you can see the 196 there, and you can almost see the "in and trust" of "In God We Trust" phrase. Now this quarter here sold for over $470. Moving right along to another 1965. Now this has got a broad strike and it's been double struck in collar. This is pretty much the same type of error that we looked at before. You can see the date there to the right of Washington as well as below him because of that double strike. And then that's also taking place on the reverse. This one's a little blurry, but it's also taking place on the reverse of the quarter as well. Now this quarter here sold for over $485. Moving right along to another simple error to always look out for if you're searching through rolls of quarters from the bank. Always look for the off-center errors. Now all of them aren't going to be 35% off-center like this one. It could be, 5% off-center. So you really got to check and see if you could find one of these in your pocket change. Now, this quarter here sold for over $250. All right, so first up, might be a little confusing here, but you definitely want to stay with me throughout this whole video so you understand exactly what to look for. Now, in 1964, that was a transitional year for the reverse, the back of the quarter. Now, there's type A, type B, and type C. So if you look there where the arrows are pointing at the top three pictures, the S there is where you really will determine which type of quarter you have. Now there are other ways which are listed below there, and you can see the differences between those as well. But you see how the type B on the top picture there, the E and S are very far apart. The type C, they're a little far apart, and then the type A, they're very, very close there. Now you can also look at the bottom images as well if you want to pause this video and check out the differences between each type. Alright, so here's another example of the type B reverse versus the type A reverse. Now you see there the A on the left, both of the E and the S are practically touching, and then the E on the S on the type B, there's a wider space between that E and S there. So here is a 1964 Washington quarter. Of course, these are 90% silver. All 1964 quarters and prior are 90% silver. This has a type B reverse, pretty high grade here, and it's sold for over $90. Now next up is a 1964D silver quarter here. Now this has the type C reverse, not the highest grade there, about uncirculated, so not the greatest grade there. And this coin sold for a little over $100. Now these next two images here are 1964D Washington quarter that have the reverse of the 1965. Now, basically how you tell the difference is that it's got strong feathers there on the eagle, it's got bolder leaves and tail feathers. Now here is a 1964D with the reverse of the 1965. Of course, because of that transitional year, now this quarter here sold for over $140. Next up is a 1964 double die reverse on the Washington quarter. So doubling taking place there on the lettering of the Washington quarter, so always be checking your silver quarters for the double die reverse. Now there's actually a double die obverse that we're gonna look at here in just a second. So get you a cheap little coin USB microscope to find these types of errors. Also on the 1964 Philadelphia minted Washington quarter, there's also doubling on the reverse of that coin as well. And here's an example of the doubling taking place on the lettering of the 1964 Philadelphia minted Washington quarter. Now let's look at some quarters that actually have the double die reverse that have actually sold for some money. Now here's a double die reverse 1964 quarter that sold for over $60. Next up, here's another example of the same type of error, double die reverse, and this quarter here sold for over $370. Moving on to another 1964 double die reverse, much higher grade, and it sold for over $975. Now just for something to look for on the 1964 quarter on the obverse, the front of the coin look at the phrase "In God We Trust," because there are examples out there of doubling taking place on the phrase "In God We Trust" on the front of the 1964 quarter, so always be searching for that as well. Now here's an example of a very high graded Washington quarter, 1964 of course, and this quarter sold for over $6,300. Don't forget to subscribe in the middle, check out the videos to the left of me, and until tomorrow, I will see you all in the comment section below. This is Couch Collectibles, and this is where I disappear.